Good Monday morning, Thrones Talkers. I'm Ken Napzok for another edition of Collider's Thrones Talk. We are here broadcasting live right now, which means if you want to talk to us on Twitter, you can use the hashtag Thrones Talk, and we'll find it. Maybe get some questions in. We have got an episode that's got some layers. It's got some unpacking. It wasn't as big and loud as last week's, but it had some big ramifications buried beneath it. And with me to get through all of it is Dennis Tzeng.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Another episode of Game of Thrones every night when I watch it Sunday. I'm always like psyched. I'm like ready to talk about it today.
Absolutely. And Mike just dropped. And John Rocha.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I got my Warhammer with me. Lift up the gate. Let's go fight for the King of the North. Let's make this happen. I'm still ready.
I could see you going north.
With a Warhammer,
With me?
absolutely.
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, my God.
And since Rachel Cushing is out on a much-needed vacation, much deserved, we have returning to Collider Game of Thrones chatting, Perri Nemiroff.
I am so happy to be back here. I think I'm extra happy, though, because I've been watching the show, and you guys have been crushing it. So I am really freaking honored to be filling in for Rachel today. Thank you for
We're
having
very
me.
glad you're here. Very happy to have you here. I know Game of Thrones is something you love just as much as Star Trek. So
Thanks,
let's
Cody.
get into it first with our overall thoughts, and we'll dive into this episode. Again, like I said up top, this would be very easy to look at this as a slow episode because you know what? It was slow. It was a slow roasting, slow grilling barbecue meal, John Rocha. We had the fire last week. We have the smoke this week, but there's a lot buried into it. What's overall what you taking from this episode?
I absolutely love the episode. I think it was a perfect kind of next episode to have after the last two we had. Just all that was happening in that last episode with Drogon and everything like that. So you need something to kind of pull back a little bit, let you understand what Game of Thrones is all about, which is the conversations, the dialogues, the machinations, the little games everyone's playing, the Game of Thrones. And then you have this queen who, Danny, week to week, you cannot tell. Is she the Mad Queen? Is she not the Mad Queen? Cersei is obviously that. And Jon Snow is growing in power, growing in his confidence as King of the North. All of that is happening. And then we have the Jaime stuff. So there's so much going. And then that ending, my God, that ending, that what do you want to call it? Magnificent Seven, Suicide Squad, whatever you want to compare it to. So to me, this was a fantastic episode that got back to the roots of why you enjoy Game of Thrones. The battle scenes are great, but it's those conversations and the complexity of these characters that we got to enjoy again and then have all these storylines play themselves out for the future.
This is one of those episodes when you put the entire puzzle together of the show, you're going to go back, and this is going to be a key piece, though it doesn't mean it's a big, loud piece. Perri, your thoughts?
I'm a big fan of this episode. It's easy to call an episode with no action or little action slow. That's not what this is at all, though, because if you start to separate every single conversation we saw in this episode, there isn't a single ounce of fat. There isn't an extra line of dialogue that doesn't matter. So I'm pretty sure that even though we didn't have all that much action this episode, it kind of flew by. I mean, I watched it twice, and it has that effect that I love when I think that each sequence is so well thought out and so well paired with what comes after it, too. It's just every single scene in this episode just naturally propelled you into the next one where what happened before still matters. You're onto something new, and that matters for the next thing. I think it was just so well structured that even though it was a whole lot of talking, everything was really well picked out, and it moved so fast.
66 minutes. That's a pretty long Game of Thrones episode, and it did feel fast and interesting. Last week's director, Matt Shakman, directed this week's episode, which at the time, we thought, wow, this guy's getting all the big sequences. He's getting this in the big fight at Eastwatch. I guess we should have known, Dennis. They gave him one big one so he could quiet down in this episode. Eastwatch might have been a weird title, but this definitely had a lot of things.
It's kind of like the first episode of the season in many ways. One, it was named Eastwatch. Really, we didn't get it to the end. It was just almost like a preview, like in the premiere where they talked about Dragonstone, and really it was just her landing. And then also in the sense that this was a setup episode. Yes, it didn't have a lot of action, but had a lot of information. They revealed a lot of information. Also, Gendry's back.
Yeah.
Gendry's back.
So we finally get to
Back
see him.
again.
He's thrust into that storyline at Eastwatch.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see what happens in the next episode.
Absolutely. It's setting us up for something big. Setting us up for, I think, the main event of this season. But let's dive in right where the show started. Fields of Fire 2 is over. We've got nothing but smoke lifting in the air with a great shot. And the mystery of did Jaime survive? Did Bronn survive? I don't think we ever had some doubts that they would. But We get it solved right away. John Rocha, they are pulled. Bronn pulls him out of the water. That plot armor did not sink Jaime.
Bronn is a very strong guy. Clearly, to drag him wet and the armor all above, and it's coming out of the water and playing like you've just been almost drowning is a very difficult thing to do for an actor, and I thought they both nailed it in this scene, definitely. But what was interesting about their exchange is it furthers this idea that Jaime and Cersei are not on the same page. Bronn also having a little bit of a advantage on Jaime, which was laid out in the last episode, talking about you owe me a castle, you owe me this or that. He saved his life now again, which makes this very, very complicated because he says, until I get what I want, Drago doesn't get to kill you. You don't even get to kill you. I get to kill you if you don't give me what I want. And I think, in my opinion, that's a little bit of foreshadowing for what's coming in the season or maybe next season. But certainly something's going to happen between Bronn and Jaime, and we get that layered in later on with Cersei's statement to him too.
What I love about this, too, is Bronn might be the only smart person in Westeros going, do you see them dragons? I want no part of this.
Right.
Also interesting that Jaime Lannister, Perry, says he wanted to end the war, which is something Robert Baratheon said about one of his first kills. I think actually his first kill when he talks back in season 1 about this highborn blank wanted to end the war by charging at me, and that's what Jaime wanted to do, a highborn fool.
Yeah, I'm starting to see Jaime, even though I think that's, the respectable way to approach these things is to want to end the war, because clearly wanting to fight and win is not going to work for, really anybody playing the game at this point. With Jaime, though, he is just coming across as kind of weaker and weaker and weaker to me, where really it doesn't feel like he has an upper hand anywhere. One with Bronn, and I think it was a very telling thing to have Bronn be the one to surface first at the beginning of the episode. The first shot is of him.
Right.
He has the upper hand over Jaime. Jaime needs him in order to survive, and he flat out said, the second, I'm out when those dragons come, and I just want what I want from you. I'm not really here to protect you as a buddy. And as the episode progresses, we see where his loyalties really lie. So I'm kind of curious to see who he winds up putting number one. I think number one's always going to be Bronn in his eyes, but maybe who he's putting number 2, and then also what happens with Cersei's little threat there.
Yeah, absolutely. Dennis, what do you think about this, Jaime? We had no doubts.
Yeah, we didn't think he died, but I think also you had Bronn bring him up from the water, but he must have swam him across the whole lake.
Yeah, exactly.
Because when he pops up, the battle's way far away.
Way far away.
But anyways, with Jaime, I think it's desperation, it's fear. He's like you said, his relationship with Cersei, he knows is not the same, and that's kind of like the only thing that really has been his purpose in his life. And he's terrified of the dragons. The look on his face, he's like, look, that's one of them. They got 3.
Yeah.
Like that one just totally decimated our forces. So he's freaking out. So
yeah, absolutely. And then in this scene we got Dany. You talk about being the Mad Queen. I think she's still more now Aegon the Conqueror. This is something Aegon would have done. I'm going to kill you all unless you bend the knee. Then we're good. We're going to have a good time. We're going to have a good, peaceful 24 plus years after the conquest that Aegon brought to Westeros. So I think Dany's more that than Mad Queen, John. But she also burned the Tarleys, making Sam the last Tarley. Oh, by the way, which we'll talk about later. Yeah. But Randall and Dickon. Oh, Dickon, sit down. Sit down, Dickon.
Well, you kind of had a feeling Dickon wasn't going to make it. As soon as Bronn made fun of his name, it was only a matter of time. You're not going to put that guy in charge of the house. People make too much fun of his name. But I thought it was a noble way for him to go out for a character we just gotten to know a little bit more. Obviously we met him last season, but I got to know a little bit more in this season, and I think he died in a way that was noble. And once again, it's Game of Thrones kind of zigging when you expect him to zag. You thought he was talking about the smell of people, all this kind of stuff last episode, but it's really noble the way he died and sacrificed himself. So in that way, I do think it's a little bit of Mad Queen. And the fact that Tyrion is the one telling her, like, don't do this, put us in the black, blah, blah, blah. But this is interesting because I'm on the fence about her because, yes, you could say Mad Queen, but also if you're going to break the wheel, like she keeps saying, you've got to break the conventions of tradition, respect and tradition, which is what Tyrion was trying to counsel her with, like put him in the black and put him on the wall, all these kinds of jazz. And she's like, no, I gave him an option. They chose that option. And there's almost there is an almost nobility in that she's giving them the option to go out in a way that, as warriors, fighting to the end, being burned to death, it's still a way to die and maintain your principles. So it's an interesting path she's choosing.
Yeah, Dennis, what are your thoughts on this? Because John's right. She's doing exactly what promised. Here's your choice. You made that choice. Gonna burn you. That seems pretty fair. And yeah, it's weird to say Randall Tarly goes out noble because he's kind of a dick on. I still wish Dickon would have bent the knee, but you're right. They went out strong and proud. Danny almost respected that.
Yeah, I mean, before this scene, I also really liked when Tyrion's walking the battlefield, basically searching for Jaime to see if he's dead or not. And I think he's still not absolutely sure until later in this episode. The whole image of Drogon on that hill, just like towering over all of the soldiers, and just like how in fear they are. I mean, at first there was a few that were like, "No, I'm not gonna." Most of them were bending the knee, but you had obviously Randall and Dickon, and then a few others. But once those two were toast, it was gone. But it's a change for Dany, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she has been in the past more lenient, more like, other cities that she's conquered back, like Marine and stuff. Like, yes, there was people that she took some of those noblemen and put them on those posts. Yeah. But this was different. This was something where, like, she's like, it was a very hard line of like, okay, you either with me or you're dead. Even knowing that, these Lannisters men, kind of like when we saw in a previous episode, I'm sure not all these people are bad people. They're doing their job, and she's just having none of it. She's like, okay, well, you're either with me or you're dead. She did try to explain herself in the beginning, like to say, look, don't believe all this propaganda about me being this foreign invader. Like I was, I'm like a rightful heir and all these things. So
which is interesting because Randall Tarly says to Tyrion, Perry, there's no easy choices anymore. Because he didn't want, I don't think he wanted to back Cersei. He just felt that was the thing I needed to do right now. And he's got this view of Dany that's, like Dennis just said, not necessarily the right view.
Yeah. I was also wondering if that decision was really purely his own or if he was trying to save Dickon. And that turned into, his main goal in choosing whether or not to bend the knee. But I think this scene is probably my favorite scene of the entire episode. And this is one of my favorite things that Game of Thrones is doing, maybe more so than ever now. And I think it goes to show that, I know we talk about slow episodes. I mean, even this episode is slow in a sense, but you have so many episodes that are considered filler episodes or episodes where you're moving pieces around a chessboard. But that's why moments like this matter, is because we know everything that Dany's been through every single season. And this is just a culmination of, oh, well, I did that then. This is how it panned out. So this is how I should treat this situation. So I'm sitting there watching and rewatching this scene. Is she exhibiting mad tendencies, or is she being, a fair ruler? It might not be fair to say, oh, bend the knee or die, because then what decision do you really have? But at the same time, if she doesn't start to use the dragons, they're kind of worthless. And the slow build towards using them in a big way, it seems like a smarter tactic to use them in this respect. And then, last episode, I guess she used them in a big, bold way, but using them bit by bit before you go for that main attack. So I think I'm starting to give her even more credit with every single episode, because I think I'm kind of siding with her mentality at this point, because I don't think she had any other choice here.
Right. Now, and John, going back to you on this, we see Tyrion and Varys talking about it, and they're both a little shell-shocked, as they should be, because they saw the Mad King. Varys talks about being in the courtroom where the Mad King was burning people by wildfire, and that's a great scene of Varys and Tyrion trying to justify what they're witnessing here. But I think the question is Tyrion right, Varys right, or is Dany right? Because this worked before with Aegon.
Yeah, and I think the season's gonna play itself out to answer that question, Ken. Because honestly, you're right. You see Tyrion and Varys having that conversation, and he says, "I am the hand, not her head." Right?
Yeah.
He's trying to create some plausible deniability in the situation, and Varys takes him to task because of his experience with the Mad King, and he's, I kept telling myself as they were doing this or that, is I'm not the one doing it. I'm not the one doing it. So I think it's interesting because once again, Benioff and Weiss are doing this great work with this season is making things mirror what's happening in our world. This idea of what is your responsibility when you see a leader acting in an insane way or a crazy way or a dangerous way. What is your responsibility, right? As you're sitting there. Same thing happened with Tarly. Tarly having that conversation saying you backed a foreign invader against someone who wasn't born on this soil. This whole idea. These are brilliant things that they're doing. They're just subtle hints and they're there, but it makes it feel real and you're getting the connection to it. So, but you see that Tyrion feels like he's at his wit's end with Dany. Like everything else he's used, the logic, he's losing power slowly in that circle of advisors. And it's even when they get that idea where they want to go get the White, he's almost the quietest voice in the room encouraging the situation. So there's only so much you can do. And Dany is the look she gave Tyrion when he tried to tell her what to do. He's like, I did that, and everyone will choose that if I give them the opportunity to go in chains. I'm not going to do that anymore. And you're just like, oh man, this is insane. We'll see where this goes.
Dany's got a game plan. It's working. It's scaring people. Like Dennis, Jaime Lannister was returned to King's Landing to report to Cersei, we're going to lose this war, sister. We're going to lose this war. It is an interesting little moment because Cersei kind of at first is like, whatever, we'll get sellswords. But Jaime's seen this. He knows.
He's giving her the brutal truth but she doesn't want to hear it. She's like, oh, we got money now. We got Tyrell's money. We can spend all this, get all these mercenaries. And he's like, it doesn't matter. He's like, he's not. At first, he didn't even talk about the dragons. He was talking about just the Dothraki. He's like, oh, they just killed us for fun. They were like, whatever. Like our guys were nothing to them.
It was like batting practice.
Yeah. So you can hire all the mercenaries you want, and they're just gonna kill us. And then you add the dragons to that, and that will just ultimately just decimate. And she just didn't want to hear it. And then he talked about how Tyrion didn't kill Joffrey, and that it was Olenna, and she didn't want to believe it. But he's like laying down the logic and reasoning. But because she was so she was so set on blaming Tyrion for Joffrey's death that I think he got through to her because I think he came from she could tell that he was telling the truth, but then she kind of blamed him for not then making Olenna suffer as much as she had wanted to. Right,
which is an interesting moment, Perri, because it seems like Cersei is faced with the truth about Joffrey, something she kind of already knew. There were some great scenes with Marjorie where she was like, he would have been your nightmare, that type of stuff. So Jaime gets through to her in that way, but she has this fight and die or submit and die attitude right now. Cersei's mindset, is she in control of her own mind?
It's so hard to say because given what she's done in the past, I am inclined to believe that she is in control just because she's so volatile, and who knows what she's going to do to get what she wants. She's really capable of just about anything. Her reaction to all this, though, is kind of what made me go back and say to myself, oh, that was a smart decision Dany made to burn them and send a message, because I think that's the only reason that Cersei's in a position where she's actually considering calling this truce. And, it might not be a pure truce where she's actually going to honor it. She's probably going to say, yeah, let's do what you say, and then behind the scenes, I'm going to start manipulating the situation the way I want it to be. But that seems to be the only possible way to kind of get the ball rolling in a positive direction, even though Cersei's a snake, and she's probably going to figure something out to try to get what she wants in the end anyway. But there's never any avoiding that.
Never any. John, I mean, Jaime's shell-shocked right now.
Yeah. I think Perri alluded to it earlier. Jaime is cuckolded. He's absolutely cuckolded, and even more so later on when they have that second conversation. He's absolutely cuckolded. You see, because she will pull rank on him when it's convenient for her. Like she said, I am not. What's the choice, to submit or to be killed? I know what my decision is, and you're a soldier. You should know what your decision is. Like it's an emasculating thing that she's doing, and it's interesting to watch this relationship. dissolve in front of you without Jaime knowing that it's dissolving. Like Jaime, like it's like you got your friend in a bad relationship, like he or she keeps doing this stuff to you. How can you not see it? You're like, no, you don't know. She's really sweet at 3 a.m. Blah blah blah. But this is what's happening, right? And you see this, and she is pulling rank when she is, and she will not go willingly. I think that walk of shame changed Cersei forever. And she will never submit, never bend the knee, never do anything like that ever again. She'd rather go out on her shield. And and it's crazy to say this, but there's a nobility in that way that she wants to fight to the end. Whereas Jaime's about keeping the whole thing alive, and he's got the bigger picture. Cersei's very much about power. And I think you're right what you said, Perri. Like she's gonna pull this. Like she says later on, we should fight our enemies like our father fought our enemies, which is a little bit of allusion to a red wedding situation. So I'm like, okay, we'll see what happens here in this whole truce.
Yeah, Cersei, I mean, look, in this kind of, she's the first queen, man. She's got, and she's probably maybe doesn't get as much credit because of that, because she's a queen, not a king. And she's got this, I love this idea. There's Cersei, I always have a lot of empathy for Cersei because she's had a privileged upbringing, but she had a horrible existence. And you can see it's all just kind of in her brain. And here's Jaime, the man supposed to be at her side, and he's like, we're going to lose. And we know Cersei will choose violence if she has to. I like the idea of violence and die, or submit and die.
And I think that line where she says, I'm sitting on her father's throne. She doesn't say I'm sitting on my throne or the throne. Her father's throne.
You killed her father, by the way. She's going to have a little tough time finding peace with her, but more on that later. Let's go to Dragonstone. Speaking of Daenerys and Jon and relationships ending, we got maybe a relationship beginning. Ew. Why are we all rooting for this? Why are we all rooting for this? Dany, for some reason, I'll say it, for some reason, it was one of the weird moments, flies in, lands in front of Jon. Jon's just watching it, and Drogon stomps up to Jon, and it's like, oh, hey, you might be one of me. All right, that's good. But it was an interesting scene there. A lot going on in Dragonstone. Dennis, we can start diving in. We got Bran's message with him seeing the Night King. Jon and Drogon, and then we got this plan to prove that the whites and the White Walkers are real, and Jorah's back. A lot to choose from. A lot going on at Dragonstone. Dennis, where do you want to dig in?
Yeah, I mean, when Jon Snow, I mean, everyone was watching that scene with him and Drogon, just Drogon recognizing, okay, this is a Targaryen. There's like a wonder and amazement and fear in Jon Snow's eyes as he's looking at the dragon. Dany also said, she's becoming more and more, what's the word? Brutal? I don't know exactly how to say it, but she's like, I have fewer enemies than I did yesterday. She responds to Jon Snow, and Jon Snow doesn't, he's always been one that's, even though he's great at violence, has shied away from it, and Dany seems to be at this point embracing it. She did ask about the knife to the heart, which he is still keeping,
being cagey.
Yeah, and we'll see how that goes. And then the whole thing we talked about that before with Tyrion and Varys. That was one of my favorite scenes of the whole episode, with Varys like saying, "Hey, you can't." Don't try and rationalize this stuff. Don't try to be like, hey, well, it wasn't me. It wasn't me.
Right.
If you're aiding and counseling her, then you are responsible for what she does.
Right.
With Jorah, meeting back up with
my man's
Dany.
back.
He looked a little different. I think his hair's like a little darker.
Hair's a little grown out.
Yeah.
He's eating his vegetables. He's stronger.
But to me, I was like, man. Like as soon as Tyrion gave him that coin, I was like, "Oh, you're dead.
Oh, I know.
You're dead, mofo." Right? Like he's like, "Here's this thing that that means so much to you and me that we survived. Here, take this and bring it back to me later." Oh, well, okay, he's dead now.
Yeah, there was a lot of last looks, I thought, in this one here. Jon looking very much like Ned, by the way, standing up there, Jon Rocha, when this dragon comes by. Now there's Dany's face. There's a lot of things going on. I rewatched the scene a couple times now. First, I think there's kind of like, whoa, Drogon kind of likes him, which is sometimes you ever date a girl and you meet her dog and her dog's crazy and the dog's like, oh, you're good. And you're like, I'm in. This dog likes me. Drogon. And so Dany has this weird look of like, whoa, well, who is this guy? And then also, I kind of like this guy. Oh, by the way, your nephew, Dany, but it's okay. It's cool. It's probably accepted. It's probably nephew aunt is probably farther away than a lot of the other relationships in Targaryen family. So a lot of stuff going on in this scene, John.
Yeah, but first of all, I have to read this text I got from a friend of mine. He was like, Old Town and Dragonstone are like F leagues away from each other. How did Jorah get there so fast? And that's absolutely true. They put in the railroad, and then is he riding dragons himself? Like, it's just so funny to have that happen. But we have to throw that away this season because that's one of the joys of the way we're barreling to the end of this season. But this is an interesting moment. It was a friend of mine said it was kind of sexual. I didn't see it that way, but like him stroke, like such the CGI work alone was
some of the
amazing,
best ones.
right? You really felt what it would be like to be that close to a dragon and him touching the scales or the skin and everything, and then her coming down. She has this presence, and like her look that she gives him when he calls them the beautiful is not the word I was like, and she goes, "What'd you say?" And it was like, whoa, oh, so she has this gear that's there at any moment to destroy anyone who's contradicting her about anything. It's her like default gear. So you see this interesting sexual thing happening between them. It feels like watching New Hope all over again after you know the story, and so it's a little weird thing happening. But as we find out later, I wonder where this goes because they don't throw the line. Like you said, Perri, that's not a wasted line in this episode. The stabbing of him will come into play at some point, especially once they find out his heritage, because as we find out later, he has a stronger claim to the throne than Dany. Can Dany use this knowledge once she finds out that he's back from the dead to undercut his right to the throne? So there's so much that was revealed here that I really enjoyed. Then Jorah giving Jon that look of like, that's my woman, son. Don't you be looking at my woman that way. And you're right. Like he looked just like Ned Stark in that jacket. It was beautiful.
And also, so Perri, the stuff going on, the underplay, we're making jokes about Dany, kind of like, who is this guy? That's there. That's absolutely there. But also, in this scene alone, Jon Snow's someone who didn't kill Mance Rayder when he had him helped him be defeated. He in fact told Stannis, "You should keep him alive because he kept me alive." And you got Dany like, "Nah, I had fewer enemies than yesterday." And this line about sometimes strength is terrible, which is a line that personally I agree with in a lot of ways too. But it's also not necessarily what Jon Snow believes in.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's true. As much as people want to be leaders and in these positions of power, it's a huge responsibility. And I think what we're coming to learn is that nobody can do it on their own. We have seen leaders all throughout every single season of Game of Thrones that have people around them and they pick and choose what they want to listen to. I feel like what this episode is setting up, maybe even more so than any other, is that every single person that's part of Dany's little group now has something important to contribute, has something real, has something that will make the world a better place. And it's just about figuring out how to put all these pieces together. And I feel like that moment between Jon and Drogon is just, that's the time where she's starting to realize how important he's going to be in her life.
Right.
I don't necessarily know if she's like, oh, he touched him, so that means we're related and he's got that kind of blood in him. But it definitely looked like in her eyes, it finally registered that even though she was warming up to him in previous episodes, like, no, this is a guy I need to take seriously. And, maybe with something like Tyrion, she kind of just got used to him always telling her what to do, and she didn't see anything happening fast enough. But I think once we add Jon to the mix, I really think that contingent around her is going to start to kind of find its place and push, her leadership qualities in a more appropriate direction.
Yeah, and it's she used the dragons or Drogon appropriately, and she followed Jon's advice too. She didn't burn innocents in castles; she burned a military supply line and soldiers and all that stuff. So she kind of followed along. So I thought it was interesting that right after that, where she went and proved to herself, because you're right, Perri, she's been like, "I'm tired of waiting and tired of watching you guys fail. I got these dragons. Let me go kick some ass." She does that, and she comes back, and you already got the sense of, I think even in that Jon scene, that moment, it wasn't, you're right. I don't think she's like Targaryen. I think she was just like, this guy's got something. I'm probably attracted to it, but I also need it, and I recognize it, and it could also threaten me in some way. There was that there. So that's interesting that immediately then she's like, all right, what are we going to do?
I actually got that look in Drogon's eye more because after he touches him, there's like one blink, and it's really weird how a completely digital dragon can give you the sense that, oh, I know this guy, and he's part of us.
What do you mean completely digital? It's just what?
Well,
it's not a real.
Well,
No, it was.
we can all dream. It's okay.
It was some of the best CG in there, and from this, there's this plan, and I like this idea. It's going to form this Jon Snow SEAL Team 6, Snow Team 6. Some people call it a Magnificent Seven Suicide Squad. I'm just calling it the 1989 Major League Baseball All-Star lineup. What's going on? But I like this idea. I think it's crazy, though. I'm talking about not from a pundit analysis standpoint. If I'm in the story bubble and I'm one of these characters that lives in this world, and Jon has seen what he's seen, and he's like, you know what? You know what's a good idea? Let's go up and take one of them. How do you think this is working? Now, Alistair Thorne brought a hand down, and I love that they actually explained it in the post credits, Benioff and Weiss stuff, which are always great. You should always be watching that kind of stuff. That Alistair Thorne did. G.R. Mormont said, take this hand and go down and show somebody. Well, what happened to that? Well, the hand disintegrated and was gone by the time he got here. Yeah. So let's just bring a whole body. I think it's a crazy plan just from a story point of view, Perri. How are they going to do this?
Okay. On the one hand, I think that plan is flat out stupid.
Yeah.
I don't understand why they all said, oh, like maybe we should do this. With all the crazy things that they've come up with as a group that they've enacted that made a little bit of sense but still failed, I am shocked that they opted to do that, especially when Jon is the only one there who really understands what they're up against. However, the idea of a whole bunch of them going up and facing that group, because as a horror lover and with slasher films, there's no better formula for me than watching a group get picked off one by one. What that sets up and how excited that made me for the next episode is just so through the roof that I'm kind of willing to forget it for a little while. But no, I think the plan's stupid.
Yeah, absolutely. Jon, I mean, again, you're right, Perri. Jon Snow has seen that he's not, this isn't like season 1 where like one white came down and he killed it with fire. Let's take that. He knows what's up there. He was at Hardhome. How can he think this works? Help me, John Rocha. Help me.
I spat out my muffin when this happened. I was eating a muffin while it just spat. I was like, this is the stupidest idea.
Sunday night muffin.
That's right, a Sunday night almond poppy muffin. I was spitting out going, this is the stupidest idea I've ever heard because it makes no sense. But this is, once again, why people mess up in these situations. They're thinking in a noble, classic, good way. Cersei is not that. You cannot reason with her. You cannot understand. And that's the thing that drives me nuts about Tyrion. Tyrion should be the one being loudest in the room saying, you can't, this is a dumb idea. It's not going to work. She's going to trick you guys. She's not going to all of a sudden go, oh, okay, you're right. Maybe we should band together and fight this thing. And then afterwards we'll fight each other for what's left. That's such a phenomenally stupid idea. But Perri nails it. The joy you feel with this idea that they're all going out on this excursion to try and get this white, it gets you excited, and especially for that ending, which was so amazing. So to me, although it's a ridiculous idea, you allow for it because it excites you to see all these people come together for this one thing because you know it's going to be a massive, massively awesome fight.
Yeah, and there's a lot of other things there in this scene too. Jon learns that, oh, by the way, Arya and Bran are still alive.
Yes.
And and then this news that, Bran, I love that scene where Bran wargs into the birds and the ravens, and then the Night King's like, whoa, here. We saw that from the trailer in context. It delivered for me. It was chilling. That's a lot of stuff going on. And Dany clearly not wanting Jon to go. Again, like, don't go. But then she's also kind of like, that's cool. I'm going to ride a dragon into battle. He's the type of king that will go into battle.
Just one of many problems of being a leader. I mean, we've seen Jon deal with that often where, I mean, yes, she personally doesn't want him to go, but does he go and risk his life when he is king of the North? Right. I don't really know what the right decision is because he is the only one who's dealt with it. He should be the one to go. Then again, he shouldn't. But with the Bran and Arya stuff, a little part of me was a little disappointed that I didn't get to see them for the first time, just because that moment didn't go the way that I thought it would. But I think that's a good thing. And actually, that's something that pertains to a lot of Cersei's reactions throughout the episode. Every single time someone dropped a bomb where I thought she was going to explode, she didn't. She had a different reaction. And the way this scene played out is not exactly what I thought it was going to be. So I'm kind of interested to see what happens now and see what happens when he does maybe see them face to face again. The Bran and Night King stuff gets me really excited though, because every single time we talk about White Walkers at this point, it is all about just a physical altercation. How are we going to physically chop them all down and save the day and live probably not so happily ever after? Bran offers a different tactic, and to me, that's their biggest advantage right now.
Yeah, there could be something with Bran and the Night King in this little battle they got mentally going on here, John.
Yeah, well, we saw Jon Snow touching the dragon, so we get 2 steps closer to this idea of the 3 dragon riders. This prophecy that we've heard, people who've read the books, people of us who haven't read the books have heard this thing, and this idea now comes up. People have been saying, well, Tyrion is going to be the 3rd one. He could be the Targaryen because he calmed those 2 dragons there.
Right.
But it could also be Bran. It could be Bran warging into one of the dragons as we saw as his power grows. That possibility is there. So those could be the 3 dragon riders possibly. So there's so much that can go on here, and I love the fact that they just kind of touched base with Bran and then moved on. Like it was like we got they laid the groundwork for the next episode with just that little scene. And the last look Jorah gives, Jorah, it's been nice knowing you, man. It was an awesome time. And I'm sorry, Ken. I'm sorry to say that. I know.
Breaks my heart.
That last look he gave, that was not a reason. That's for a reason.
Yeah.
And John's they almost looked like they were gonna kiss for a sec because she said she's like I've gotten used to having you around. Boom, boom. And so, but it didn't happen, unfortunately.
It's been a long road with me and Jorah. Great speech from Jon Snow about trusting a stranger, and this kind of let Dany say, hey, yeah, this plan sounds good. And the old smuggler Davos, he works his magic again and gets Tyrion into King's Landing, and 2 things happen. Well, actually 3. Bronn and Tyrion re-meet. They're old buddies. They haven't seen each other since Bronn turned down the chance to be his champion again, Tyrion's champion in season 4. Jaime and Tyrion meet, and then Gendry is back with this great meta moment of, I thought you were still rowing. He is there. So let's dive in first, Perri. I want to talk about Jaime and Tyrion. This was a great scene. Nikolai Coster-Waldau, now his name always
Coster-Waldau.
Coster-Waldau. His name always confused me. He's been hitting out of the park with some acting this season. I love this stuff.
As much as it does kind of pain me, because I liked the really strong, capable Jaime, to see him kind of withering away under the pressure of all these people that are now more powerful than him, it really does open the door to a whole lot of really great acting opportunities, and he is seizing them big time. I think he's doing a great job. This is like another interesting scenario of defying my expectations, where I did not think that meeting was going to come together exactly like that, and
Definitely not that fast.
No, I'm definitely not that fast. You brought it up earlier, Rocha. There were a couple of geographical things that didn't entirely make sense to me, but you're
Dragonstone and King's Landing are pretty close, but it was a speedboat.
The Eastwatch one is the one that I'm like, really? that was a quick trip. But with this relationship, I'm just really excited to see how it pans out, because it's got a major ripple effect where everybody that trusts someone else is going to affect how somebody else trusts them, particularly with Cersei. So I do want to see whether or not she kind of uses Bronn against Jaime eventually and punishes him.
Yeah, interesting moment there, Dennis. We're talking about Jaime and Tyrion back together again. Jaime he made a promise to Bronn, I'm going to cut Tyrion in half, but he loves his brother too much to do that, but still kind of conflicted.
Yeah. I mean, he's still angry that he helped Tyrion out by releasing him. He didn't help him so he could kill their father as much as he knew Tyrion hated him. And then so he still has that bond with him. That's why he doesn't slice him down right there and listens to what he has to say. And Tyrion is like, I just don't know about this whole plan. I mean, showing Cersei this white, I just don't know. I don't think she cares, to be honest. She's going to see him and be like, whatever. Yeah. She's going to use this because she knows, based on what Jaime's telling her, that they are like at a severe disadvantage. So she needs to find out where that advantage is, and she's, using this talk about her possible like whether she's telling the truth or not, using this to control Jaime.
Well, let's go right into that then. Cersei is preggers, or is she?
Yeah.
That's the question everyone has. One of the reasons you might doubt it is if you, are read up on a lot of prophecies or familiar with it. Maggie the Frog didn't tell her she'd have 4 children. She told her she'd have 3 and they all die. So it doesn't mean she isn't pregnant now and something might happen. And then this scene ends with her whispering into Jaime's ears, never betray me again. John Rocha, he's going to betray her again.
Yes, he will. Yeah, there was pretty much just a lot of foreshadowing in this episode. So that was certainly a moment. Look, if you've ever been in a crazy relationship, sometimes people say crazy things to keep you in that relationship.
John. Have you?
I'm just saying. As soon as she pointed to I was like, oh, we're going with a pregnancy. Damn. And she keeps him. Because he's like, through the whole episode, he's like, look, we got to stop this. We got to find for peace. And then all of a sudden she's going, yeah, we can do this, but then we're going to go and betray them like our father did. So there's so much that she's laying the groundwork. And in the books, it's alluded to that her clothes are getting a little tighter in the last book before it ends. And so, so is this illusion that she was getting pregnant in the book? So we don't know.
Yeah.
So it's up in the air, which I enjoy. I think just like everything else that's going on this season, it's up in the air. We don't know how it's going to land, and it makes us excited to see where it's going to go. By the way, I got to give a shout out to Sir Davos. I know you have a Jorah Mormont thing. Davos is my guy, like to the ends of the earth.
He's hitting home runs.
He said nothing F's you harder than time.
Yeah.
Safety is never a permanent state of affairs. Don't mind me. I'm just an old guy that's lived to a ripe old age. I need a 365-day calendar where I can rip off and have a saying from Davos every day. Would make me so happy. But I think what I love about Cersei here is Cersei knows exactly how to play Jaime. Exactly how to play Jaime. And we see this kind of juxtaposed later with Arya and Sansa. No one knows you better than your family. No one knows the buttons to push, the way to manipulate it, what you get you in the situation than your own family. And Cersei knows exactly what she's doing. I mean, I love that Davos found flea bottom Viagra. I love all of this stuff.
Yep.
Like everything about this scene was so powerful and was funny, but also chilling. And so it was so great to see it go forward.
So Perri, Cersei is always, as always, one step ahead of Jaime. She knew about this meeting, and she wants the interest. This is, you talked about things not going the way you expected. I did not expect Cersei to be like, all right, you know what? Yeah, let's meet with this Dragon Queen. I bet we can use father's kind of strategies to win here.
I did not expect that at all, which is why I really like a moment like that. And it's also part of the reason why I'm not a big fan of this bring back a White Walker thing, because had she not said that, had she not expressed even just the slightest degree of willingness to meet with Dany, then maybe I would have said, oh, like that's the only option you have, you should do it. But the fact that she's open to it at all makes me think that that's extra stupid. But what I'm hoping happens down the line is the war against the White Walkers maybe brings everybody together, and then that's when Cersei kind of makes her move, and it makes some of Cersei's allies realize, oh, she's actually out for herself. Maybe we should all side with the other team, and then we could try to all live in peace. That sounds like a little bit of like too much of a neat ending, but I'm kind of trying to put the pieces together and see what I'm hoping happens. But with Cersei and the baby, it's like I'll write stream of consciousness notes when I'm actually sitting there watching the episode, and the second she puts her hand on her belly, I'm like, what? Did she just touch her belly? And then sure enough, right after she says it. And on the one hand, I kind of think she's lying, but I also think that it could just be that she is pregnant, but it's not exactly what she's saying. I wouldn't be surprised if the baby is really somebody else's, or there's just some little way in there for her to manipulate Jaime with that, but her to not be completely honest with him, because there will come a time, I'm betting on it, where before this show wraps up, she screws over Jaime to a point where he sees and he does something to help the other side.
Also, Qyburn's been going into that chamber a little too much. Like a couple of every time Jaime walked in, that Qyburn was walking out.
Right, Qyburn's there.
He tried to stop him the first time by saying, "Sir, don't try to stop him." So you never know. There's a game being played there.
That Qyburn, and you go back to the episode 1. This picture that's going around, I love it. That Cersei is standing on that map. She's on the neck next to the fingers, and the fingers are pointing at Jaime. Could be part of the prophecy here. Dennis, though, Gendry, he's back after all this time, and I love this because this could be a character that they didn't need to bring back. Again, it's always interesting how the show adapts. Sometimes I wonder the show makes decisions because they know in the book it doesn't matter, which always, as a book reader, kind of makes me like, well, you're spoiling something. Now I don't have to worry about this character. But Gendry's back, which has a lot of weight. He is Robert's bastard son, which makes him have a line to the throne if you're still going with that kind of secession stuff. But I love it, man. He's back. He's got his father's warhammer. It looks like he made his own warhammer. I love all the stuff. It's like Ned and Robert .2.
Yeah, I loved seeing him back in. He was a fan favorite, and he was a favorite of mine. And it was one of those things where when he left, we're like, are they going to tie up that loose end, or are they just going to let it go? And, you see him, he's older, more mature, and he's, Davos comes to get him and thinks like that he needs to convince him. He's ready. He's got his bags packed and ready to go. He said he's been, and he talked about like, look, I hate being here. I don't like making weapons for the people who killed my father. And so he's ready to go. And I don't know what kind of training he's been. He says he hasn't really been wielding a sword, but he's obviously wielding that hammer because he smashes those two guys. And I kind of, is he gonna ever have a reunion with Arya again?
Hey, that could be a building level of heat there. And I love what Gendry says is, I can't wait out this war, which is what he believes is the bigger war, which is one of the reasons I love Stannis, because Stannis went north to where it really mattered, and Gendry is ready to go where it really matters. An interesting use of this character, John.
Yeah, Gendry is a forger. He forges swords. This is going to be essential as we go forward. The Valyrian steel stuff. If you go back to season 1, his master was Tobomont. Tobomont knew how to craft Valyrian steel. So I think he's going to survive this thing out in the wall, because he's going to come into use crafting Valyrian steel so they can fight the White Walkers. That's what Gendry's reason for being in this episode is too. But Dennis, you make a great, interesting point. Robert Baratheon does say in the first season, "You've got a son, you've got a daughter, I've got a son. We should marry them." Yeah, this may not be what he intended, but it could be Arya and Gendry as this goes forward. Could be then coming together and maybe marrying themselves. So there's a lot to play with Gendry, and I love that he's back. I love that Sir Davos made the joke about him rowing, which is a shout out to the fans. And I love what Davos said. It's better to be a coward for a minute than be dead for the rest of your life. There's that whole thing what you were mentioning, Ken, this whole idea of going into the situation rather than sitting back. And Gendry even ignoring Davos, going, "Yeah, I'm Gendry, son of Robert Baratheon, bastard son. Let's do this thing." And
that was
so
hilarious. That
just
was actually one of my favorite moments of the whole episode.
I like Gendry. Let's not play games. This is who I am. Our fathers trust each other. We should. And look, House Baratheon is a very key house, going back to Oris Baratheon with Aegon, their best friend relationship there. He is a bastard, but if you naturalize him by some king or queen decree, let's say the Night King is destroyed and everything gets back to normal, it's important to have House Baratheon still around, Perri.
Yeah, I think there's a million reasons why Gendry is the perfect person to bring back right now. And you were kind of saying it before with how he's fed up with just sitting there forging swords in that area right now, and he wants to beat the crap out of people with that Warhammer. And given how strongly I reacted to him bashing 2 guys' heads in, I think I'm going to have a lot of fun when next episode comes around and we can actually see him put it to use. But that's the kind of people that you need on that team in order for us to believe that they have any shot of pulling it off. And when you start to pair him with all the other people that are part of that group, it's such a well-rounded group in terms of like well-rounded with what they believe in, where they came from. And that group to me is just a shining example of what Game of Thrones does better than most other shows out there, which is respect everything that's happened before. The people that are there mean something to you, not because they were in tons of last season's episodes, but because you got to know them throughout the course of 7 seasons. That's a crap ton of character development before you put them in a war that seems unwinnable. So I love the fact that he is part of that group. I really liked that scene where he bashed their heads in and kind of saved the day so they could get out of there. I mean, speaking of that scene too, here's another thing that I didn't see coming. I thought that also, I want that Davos calendar if you ever get it.
It has to get made.
I did think that they were going to sail away. And while I'm busy in my head thinking, oh, like what's Tyrion going to do? Is he going to be stranded there? I didn't expect him to walk. And then what do you do? It's like if you, I mean, really everyday life, if you don't want to see a person and you're walking down a hallway and there's no other way to walk but forward, like what do? Do you turn around, be super awkward about it, draw more attention to yourself and walk away? Or do you walk right into it? And the way that scene played out, I thought was fantastic.
Well, that's like me and John Rocha later today when we're going to run into each other at the fermented crab section of the grocery store. We're going to pretend like we're not there.
We're not
there.
And I thought it was a great way to have him use the hammer. It lays the groundwork that he can use the hammer in the war.
He can swing it.
Yeah, and Robert Baratheon was known for his war hammer. So
Oh,
it makes that illusion of that's father like son.
Killed Rhaegar on the Trident with his hammer, but let's go up to Winterfell because we do have some stuff going up there. This was maybe we don't need to spend as much time on it, but it's pretty obvious what's going on. Arya and Sansa, who by the way didn't get along growing up in season 1, we saw that. They're still having trouble getting along. They've taken different paths. One is the lady, one is the Batman of Westeros. And I love the scene where she is kind of like Batman being the best private eye detective in the world. And Littlefinger, I'll say it. I was the one who thought Littlefinger was starting to slip, that this was going to lead directly to his death. It still might. However, Littlefinger, with that little look to Maester Wolkan a couple weeks ago about what? He's got copies of everything. He's back in charge, was pulling the strings. Arya, she's great. She's tough. She's a killer. She's smart. Littlefinger, as always, one step ahead, Dennis. I loved that moment.
Yeah, she's manipulating the whole situation, or he's manipulating the whole situation. He wants to drive a wedge between Sansa and Arya, and then, as you see in the beginning of Winterfell, you see Sansa, look, she's in one hand saying, hey, yeah, no, John's the king, but at the same time, she's not totally defending it because they're, and these Lords of the North, man, these are wishy-washy people, you know?
Yeah.
They're all over the place, you know? First,
Robert Glover and Lord Royce are like, hey, John's gone. We like you.
Yeah, exactly. They're, you know, all before it was like, oh, King Rob, you're king in the North. Oh, no, okay, we're now behind Ramsay Bolton. Okay, Jon Snow, you're king in the North. Oh, no, Sansa, you're the real... Make up your damn mind. But yeah, he's playing her with that note, which, you know, I paused to read. It basically was the note that Sansa was forced to write to send to Rob to say, hey, look, you know, come to King's Landing, bend the knee to King Joffrey, who's the rightful ruler. You know, father did a horrible thing. Now he's in, you know, this is probably before he's beheaded. And he wants Baelish wants Arya to see this so that she, you know, thinks that Sansa, you know, this is what she really thought. And it was really like, well, she's so power hungry. That's maybe some deal she set up with the Lannisters. Maybe she, I don't know. Maybe she was involved with her father's death. Who knows? So this is definitely going to play out later.
Yeah, they were both there when Ned was beheaded, John. But is this going to tear them apart? Could this some way unite them against Littlefinger? They both know how dangerous he is.
Yeah.
But Sansa's been using Littlefinger's powers to rise up the ranks herself.
Yeah, this is the part of the show that was a little uncomfortable for me because I thought it was a convenient. They took a lot of convenient narrative decisions, made a lot of convenient narrative decisions. Where's Lyanna Mormont? Mormont would have never let them talk out of turn about Jon Snow, never. So she's removed from that situation, so that narrative can go forward. And this whole idea that Arya could get fooled by Littlefinger and get tricked, that's certainly possible because she didn't stay long enough to fully complete the training with Jaqen. So maybe she can, like the waif caught her, the waif almost got her. So there's certainly possibilities here. So there's enough to play around. And this whole callback to season 1, which is great, that little note, everything. Like Littlefinger knew what he was doing, laying the groundwork. And just like any family reunion, it's always like, oh, what's up? I haven't seen you. It's great. And then 4 hours later, I always hated that guy. I don't know why. Like, it's just like a family. You know, those old wounds between them came out when she says to her, and she calls her out. She says, "You like? Oh, this is mother and father's chambers. Well, you always like nice things because it made you feel better than everybody else."
Yeah.
And then Arya's like, "Yeah, cut off some heads." And she's like, "It might be nice to cut off some heads, but that's not how you rule." So there's two different philosophies warring against each other. So Littlefinger looks like he's not going to have to do much to create the tension, but you hope smarter heads will prevail between the two of them, and they'll understand that he's manipulating them. And of course, I don't know if you want to mess with Arya while Brienne is within the walls.
That's true.
You know, that's another thing that is certainly possible because his head lopped off.
So, Perri, is Arya right? Does Sansa want to be queen? Is she doing something wrong here?
I think Arya is so wrong, and it really. I think.
Wow.
I think this.
I agree.
This segment was particularly frustrating for me as well, and I think it has a little more to do with just what I want for these characters. I've really enjoyed how Arya and Sansa have grown as characters over the past seasons, and where they are now, and how I could see everything that's happened to them in the past in how they're behaving now. And all I wanted for them was to have that reunion and just for them to be a team and help each other. And it's that we didn't get that so quickly. It is such a short moment where they're happy to see each other. And then all of a sudden, it's not just Arya going up to her and saying, you know, like maybe you should have defended Jon a little more than you did. It's no, like you are wrong. You like nice things. That's terrible. We should be chopping off heads. It's just a very extreme flip-flop that didn't really sit right to me. And it also makes me think that they're rushing the storyline, which makes me think it's going to go away really soon. And then there's the fact that Littlefinger seems to have a very easy time getting the better of Arya. I mean, after everything she's been through, to see her so easily lured into that trap didn't really sit right for me. I have a feeling all of this is going to go away pretty soon, though. There's no doubt in my mind that there's going to be that moment where Sansa and Arya know they have to come together. I think they're going to be fine, and we'll get past this kind of quickly.
I think so. I mean, we that quote from Ned Stark that played into the trailers from Sansa of the lone wolf and the pack surviving and all that kind of stuff. The Starks could still come together. I think that's possible there, but I did love that moment. Littlefinger in the shadows. Like, that's right. I'm still Littlefinger.
And like a teenage boy, he hiding porno mags under his bed, he hides the note underneath his bed.
No, it's right there. Couple big things left to talk about as we round the corner of the bend in this episode of Thrones Talk. Let's not lose this headline. We go down to the Citadel in Old Town, where Maester Ebrose is reading Bran's words. There's some great stuff there too. There's every time they go to the Citadel this season, there's always some little calls and throws out to book prophecies and maesters who did this. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. Go if you got time, go in and dig a little bit more. They talk about one of the prophecies from the Children of the Forest. It's kind of a Prince's Promise moment there. But Sam is right. He's upset. He's getting more upset. He's been cleaning poop and chili out of bowls. He's had a rough time there. He didn't get the glory. He's reading about other people's big achievements, John, and he's mad in this moment because no one really listens. I think Ebrose believes him, but has to play it cool. But also, it could very well be this message from Bran could be completely false and something to do with Dany. I understand all those moments, but Sam's anger is building.
Yeah, well, what the kids say now, Sam was feeling himself a little too much in this scene because, you know, I'm glad that you cured grayscale and you have some knowledge of this stuff, but to speak out of turn and speak so loudly and so forcefully, you know, but this is Sam embracing his power. This is part of it. Sometimes he doesn't know how he's going to blurt out things at the level to which he did. And I think if he'd approached it in a more respectful manner, it would have been consumed a little bit easier. But once you challenge their authority, they have no choice but to push back a little bit. And you're right. The Maester was like going back and forth about it and said, you know what, well, maybe it's true, but maybe this. But I thought was hilarious was like these guys who are there for the long time, have read all the know all the knowledge, are somehow doubting a kid talking to a three-eyed raven. Like, hey, I'm sure the three-eyed raven is there in the scroll somewhere, and they just heard about a dragon coming back after what? How many hundreds of years?
100 years,
setting fire the Tarleys. You know, so this is there's to me it was a little bit of an interesting back and forth and juxtaposition. But this is once again Sam's growing desire to push his knowledge, to be the person who speaks and be a part of this whole situation, which of course he stumbles into through Gilly later, but it's certainly interesting.
Well, there also touches this idea that's not, I don't think the show has room for it, but the books definitely have the idea in there that the Maesters might be suppressing magic.
Yeah.
And that has to do with Archmaester Marwyn, who believes in magic, which I thought Jim Broadbent was going to be. We all thought he was at the beginning. He's not. But Dennis, this anger leads to Sam ignoring Gilly in one of a life lesson moment.
Yeah.
Don't listen to your girlfriend. Don't listen to her. Just get caught up in your own BS. She's got the most important thing that we've heard in a long time on the show. Jon Snow isn't a bastard.
Yeah, he isn't a bastard because she reveals that Rhaegar had an annulment with, what was her name? Elia Martell. And went off and ran off and had the true marriage with Lyanna, therefore him not being a bastard. But of course, Sam is caught up in his own stuff. He's angry. That's like the angriest we've ever seen Sam before,
It's
right?
nerd rage, man.
Yeah.
That nerd rage
Yeah.
boiled over.
It is.
Yeah, he
That's a
went
comment section gone awry.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so, you know, he ran into, stole the books that he wanted to see. I don't know, you know. I'm sure there's probably a lot more books that he needs to read.
He randomly has been in
I
my
don't
mind
think
is-
like those 3 or 4 books he's taken is enough for him.
Yeah.
To learn all that he needs to know. But yeah, he skipped over the most important part.
Yeah. Perri, what can we say about this?
I loved that moment so much. I mean, I can only speak from the perspective of a non-book reader and someone who doesn't really know what's coming all the time. And I had Tower of Joy ruined for me just because I was a little too obsessive with comments and what I should know versus what I shouldn't. So after that experience where I don't think I enjoyed that revelation as much as I should have, having this hit, like, just so conversationally brought up and then ignored, but I got it. It made
Did you high five yourself?
a little bit,
Dewey,
yeah.
your
I
cat?
high five Dewey actually.
Yeah.
It just made me really excited, and I felt very fulfilled because it's not just that moment. It's also you have what Missandei says about bastards. You have the moment with Drogon and Jon, and then all of a sudden you get that. I think that the everything was perfectly laid out to lead up to that moment so that it means something for everybody. But going back to that scene with Sam and the other Maesters. With the suppressing of magic, I think maybe in the show they might be just suppressing information
I think
because
that's accurate.
any normal person that would have known that his father and his brother just died would have said something. And it's making me think that the Maesters are just a group of people that act as though they are scared. They're going to react to anything that scares them. They want to kind of like keep everything to themselves, keep themselves like Old Town safe. So maybe that's why nobody's learning about these things. And to see Sam finally rise to the occasion, even though he ignored that really important information, just finally speak up and take action, I mean, after curing the grayscale at least, and leave. It's so exciting, and it's even more exciting knowing that he's the last left. He has kind of built up that confidence in himself. We've seen him do it since day one when he thought he was worthless and he was nothing. Then all of a sudden he realizes this is the path he should be on, and now that path is changing, and he's seizing that opportunity.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what he's capable of now.
And he's got Heartsbane. But John, this stuff about Jon Snow no longer being really a Snow.
Yeah.
We're going to find this out more and more and more. When it reaches, if it does reach Dany's ears, Jon's got a better claim. Again, taking the Night King and the Army of the Dead out of the picture. If you're just going with the normal Game of Thrones, how would Dany react to that?
Yeah, and this is what is the great unknown, because is this going to push her over the edge? Does Jon want to be king of the Seven Kings? Like he might not want to be king of the Seven Kings, but he keeps being thrust into these situations. And wouldn't it be ironic that the one to break the wheel is the one who doesn't even want to be part of the wheel?
Yeah.
The one person who is not playing the Game of Thrones may be the one person standing at the end of this whole thing. So it's very interesting, because I think Dany will, and when she finds out, there will be absolutely a very strong conversation, and that whole idea, like I mentioned earlier, of him being killed. I don't think the writers are alluding to that without her finding out the information yet accidentally. That is on purpose. And this is interesting too with Rhaegar and Lyanna, because I did some research through the book, and it says that they were under the light of the Seven. The Mad King and Rhaegar ruled, and according to the book, that faith annulments and divorces were not permitted. It's not permitted under the faith. So could she say, your union with your birth from that union is not valid to my claim? And so there's so much to play with here. If they throw this into the mix of the show and let that storyline play out, to me, it just makes me even more excited to find out who's going to do what. And Dany's very, very powerful. So
there was that interaction at Dragonstone when he wants to leave for Eastwatch, and she's like, "I didn't give you permission to leave," and he was like, "I don't need your permission. I'm my own king." So and then he kind of softened up and was like, "Look, I'm gonna trust you. You're gonna trust me, and like this is for the better of the whole thing."
Dennis, what happens if Jon Snow gets this information?
Yeah.
Looks at Dany and says, "No, you bend the knee. No, you."
Well, luckily, Jon Snow, his character isn't like that. He isn't really interested in being king. I mean, he's only king because he feels like right now he's the best person that can help everybody else. But if that were to happen, I don't think he'd be like Dany, where Dany is, there's just this sense of entitlement that Dany has had lately. And I think it's starting to go to her head. And so if that does pop up, she's going to be like, no, this is mine. I earned it. I did all this stuff. She's not going quietly. She's not going like, oh, oh, you're right. You're the king now.
She's not necessarily going quietly. I agree there, but there's this week more than any other week, her view of Jon, Mr. Rocha, is changing. I don't think you're right. Dennis is very right. Jon is not the type that's going to be like bend the knee.
No.
He might be like, I don't want it. Still take it.
Right.
But what is there something changing? We've seen this with Dany's face. Not just jokes aside about love and lust. This isn't that. There's also, like we talked about with the dragon, there's something about this guy. He might be right.
He's got that energy. He's got that aura, and they're building it through the show and interact. You can see the difference between how she received him in the throne room to what she says to him before he gets on the boat. There's been a softening. There's been a connection. And even with the look she gives him when he says that thing about the dragons, it's still from a look of like hurt, anger, but hurt also. So there is a growing fondness and connection between them. What I find interesting, just occurred to me as we're talking about this, is what is Sansa's role in this if she finds out that Jon is the rightful heir to the throne? Will she be like a Lady Macbeth type situation and push him into going for the throne because it helps the entire family out more than having Dany with the Mad Queen? Will she be in his ear like Littlefinger is in her ear? So there's so much that is involved in this that goes layers deep. That isn't just what you're seeing face to face. There's so much of the other people involved. So it'll be interesting how Jon reacts to the news first. Well, let's get to that moment first, and then what he does with that information, what other people do with that information.
I still don't think he'll believe it when he first hears it.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he won't believe it. I think he really really believes he's Ned Stark's son, as you should be when you're told that your entire life. All right, the final stuff here. We have voted for the All-Star team. You, the fans of Game of Thrones, have voted in your All-Star team. Brienne was this close. She was over at Winterfell. If she had been a Dragonstone, she might have been on that boat up, but that just means Brienne has some plot left, I think, related south with Jaime. But we have this All-Star team. It's four, and we're at Eastwatch, which, by the way, when the Eastwatch castle showed up in the opening credits, I literally went, it's a new castle! It's a castle! The Eastwatch is there! I have a witness to that. I love it. Eastwatch is fascinating, built more into the wall here on the show. I love this idea about it, but we got the Brotherhood in the cell. We have got this. It was like the beginning, Perri, of a Western. We got all these guys got to band together. They don't like each other. I loved it. It could have been cheesy, but I loved how I know you. Wait, I know you. Wait, you killed my guy. Knock them out. We're all together because we're breathing. I love this moment.
I like how you view it as the beginning of a Western, and I'm like, oh, that's the beginning of a horror movie where everyone's going to be massacred.
It's like that Red Dead Redemption update with the zombies. That's what we got going on.
Okay, I'll give you that. I love how this episode wrapped up, and it is a little funny that it's like, oh, I know you, this is why I hate you and you and you. That's what the show has earned, though, and it's fun to think about some of the things that I haven't thought about in so many seasons, and the dialogue there was just so much fun. It's so perfect. The way, like, I wrote down a couple of things where, like, here we all are at the edge of the world at the same moment, heading in the same direction for the same reason from Beric, and it's just so true. And I know that some people were making fun of Beric in that situation where, like, he's busy spitting off all of this wonderful
speeches,
exactly, and someone's like, "That's enough of that. Let's stop that." But you know, it's really a perfect example of how everybody leads and everybody approaches something in a different manner, and the only way to overcome it is if we all come together and fight it together. Because in the end, that's all that matters, is that we defeat this enemy. Otherwise, everything else we're fighting for is kind of worthless. So it was just such a even though with that title, Eastwatch, for the episode, I kept waiting for them to come together in the middle and then maybe get a little action as we went forward. Seeing them come together as a group, and that last shot, just as the camera goes into the white, that's what I wanted.
That stuff getting set up, like I said, the main event. Yeah, Richard Dormer as Beric Dondarrion. This guy could read a book, and I would feel inspired. This could read the telephone book, John. I love this. It doesn't matter what we think are reasons. I love the Hound, like, shut up. Are we going with you or not? I love each character moment has the thing. You know, even Thoros of Myr and Jorah, they fought together in the Greyjoy Rebellion. There's all these connections. And Perri had some great insight, John, about this is 7 seasons of different connections and investment going into these characters who are now going to be in great peril.
Right, and Gendry getting sold to Melisandre by the Brotherhood. All of that gets thrown in there, and you're right, Perri. It's just great dialogue, and then Jon ends it by going, you know what, we're all on the same side because we're all breathing. That's enough of that. Let's all get together and let's go do this. And what is so, you see a horror, you see a Western. I'm a former military man for 8 years, so for me, that desire to fight never leaves you. And in that moment, I got so excited. When it's done really well in movies, it like excites you. And when I rewatched it a second time, I got even more excited to see that, because these are very powerful characters. Even Gendry, as quickly as we got to see him with that hammer, I was like, I'm good to go. Let's get it on. Going out there, and you have all these incredible X factors with Jorah, and then with Davos, who's not a warrior, which Tormund calls him out on. We all know. And I love how he calls her the big woman coming with it. That's such a great line. But you have all these warriors going out there to fight these guys, to fight the Whites, to fight the Night King. All of it is there. And to me, that makes me just super excited to see what happens next episode, because the next episode is 1 hour and 10 minutes, so it's going to be the battle of nutty battle. And you said something earlier, Perri, that's great. Each one of them has their own thing. You know, Thoros is a red priest. You know, Beric has the flaming sword. I mean, that sword, I can't wait till they use it. And you have the Hound, who's just a beast. And you see Gendry with the hammer. You see everything that's going on. Jon Snow's got his thing. So it's just gets you super excited to see what's going to happen. And if they said, no more Game of Thrones, we're just going to spin off and do this show, I would immediately start watching this show, because it's just a fantastic. And you put in the theaters, make a 2-hour movie out of it.
I was going to say, if you made it like a miniseries, like a Band of Brothers type of thing here, Dennis, you get the final thoughts here on this Eastwatch All-Star team forming and heading out.
Yeah. I mean, Tormund, that big woman comment was funny, and just like Davos said, was he? Oh, I'm a liability. He's like, yes, you are. Yes, like he just said, just as a matter of fact, and like them coming together. I think this is one of the things with so few episodes and the fast pace that we're going. I think in a normal, let's say 10, 12, 13 episode season, you probably would have seen a little more discussion and debate about them getting together, but because we need to get this thing going, he's like, okay, because you had Gendry. Remember, he got betrayed by the Brotherhood. He was sold to the Red Woman and Stannis, and so he, it has a lot of bad, ill feelings towards them. He doesn't trust them, and so they had to quickly kind of bypass that. But yeah, I like this group coming together for this one sole purpose, and obviously next episode we'll see a lot more of that.
Absolutely. We are all on the same side. We are all breathing. Next week we got to believe this big battle. I wish it was I thought that Perri was right. I thought this was going to be like a hard home episode where you got about 35 minutes of great talking and then the last, you know what? But hey, I like to be surprised. I'd like to not be able to guess this story. All the speculation is fun, but I want to be surprised each week. And I definitely was. A lot of twists and turns and the big reveals. Jon is naturalized, or at least he is a natural born, not naturalized yet, hasn't figured it out. A lot of stuff going on there. Next week, we'll see what's happening. We'll see who survives. Jorah, please, just pull through. Does the Hound survive? I still think he's got stuff to do. We'll see what's going on, who's going to go. You can join us all week long on Twitter by following us at our little Twitter handles and using the hashtag Thrones Talk to continue the conversation. Perri, so great to have you. Great insight.
It was so nice being on the show.
So good to have you back.
Even though I've been enjoying sitting back and just watching for fun. I mean, it really it adds another level to the show when you're sitting there and you're really thinking about everything and you're going back and rewatching scenes and looking into what was into the book. So I really did enjoy the opportunity to come back on the show.
Good to have you. They can follow you at
you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Perri Nemiroff.
And talk Game of Thrones. John Rocha. Winter is here, my friend.
I mean, it is here. Finally, 7 seasons in, winter is here. We'll see who the lone wolf is as this goes forward, so I'm looking forward to it. Guys, you can always find me at The Rocha Says on Twitter and on Instagram. And yes, talk Game of Thrones. DM me if you want. I don't care. Let's talk about it. I'm having a great time this season.
Slide into his DMs. Dennis.
Only 2 episodes left. Oh my God, I can't believe it. It's going to be over before we know it. And then I'm going to be sad because it's going to be like a year and a half, 2 years before we see it. Look, that's how far ahead I'm thinking. I was like, oh my God. All right. But yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter at ThinkHero, Instagram, Dennis.tzng. And I'm always down to talk Game of Thrones.
Absolutely. You can follow me at Ken Napzok. I talk Game of Thrones daily. You can find me there talking Thrones Talk. Next week is episode 6, but it's kind of episode 9 if you look at it the way the season's built. So we'll see you next week. I want to thank Adam, Cody, and Christian for coming in early. Cobster, if I say Christian, people think Harloff got up early. He didn't get. Cobster got up early. Setting up, making us look pretty on this show this morning. We'll see you guys next week for Thrones Talk.
Hey guys, if you like this video, click the thumbs up button. Also, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. It'll help you stay up to date with everything we've got going on here at Collider.